have this just into the NY1 newsroom. Former Governor Hugh Carey has died. As governor from 1975 to 1982, he was best known for helping to bring the state and the city through the fiscal crisis of the 1970s. Our political anchor, Errol Lewis, joins us now. He's on the phone to talk more about Carey's life and legacy. And Errol, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Kristen.
And let's talk a little bit about this. He served 7 terms in Congress and then became governor in the 70s, and by all accounts did not come in at a good time for the state or the city.
No, he did. He did not. But he was the kind of politician and the kind of leader that you almost can't imagine now. I mean, he really was from a different era. And in the next couple of days, as we recount his life, it's going to be important to remember that this is somebody who was born, Kristen, in 1919. Right. So he's born really right after the First World War. He came of age during the Second World War, and in a lot of ways, those experiences shaped him in a way that he became almost the perfect person for when the fiscal crisis struck. He took office in 1975, and it was using sort of the old school ways, ways of doing business as a liberal reformer that was raised in the 1930s. You know, it's just kind of an odd combination. You don't find it anymore. And he put together what was necessary, including the political pressure to rescue the city in the fiscal crisis.
Let's talk a little bit about what he did and then his decisions after that as well, because he decided against a third term. But in there was a lot of work that he did.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, the crisis in the 1970s came from the city both having a penchant for spending way too much, and also books that were just not reliable. There was stuff that was going on the way the city and frankly the state too kept the books that you really couldn't tell what was being spent and what it was being spent for. So we were in the habit, I guess, to really just condense it, of borrowing money for long-term projects and then using it to pay the police and the firemen and everybody else. And the game basically was up by the mid-1970s. And it was Carey who came in and did the hard work of requiring the city to put its books on a sounder basis, and more importantly, convincing the banks to lend one more round of money on the assumption that we would change our way of doing business, that the money would eventually be paid back. I mean, a lot of this was just sort of person to person, relying on the word of other civic, business, and political leaders. And he was the guy who put that deal together. He was the one who made it happen.
Interesting. And then, you know, as we mentioned before, he decided against a third term. What has he been doing in recent years? When did you know that he was ill, and how did you hear the word?
Oh, well, he's been ill for quite a long time. And look, frankly, you get into your 90s, you know, these things are going to happen.
Life takes its course, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he frankly, though, physically was actually, you know, healthier than most people in public life. I mean, he was a robust, you know, sort of strapping guy, often was compared to an Irish cop, you know, the big bushy eyebrows, and was sort of an imposing guy. Came from a physical, rough-and-tumble culture, you know. He was one of 6 boys in his family, that kind of thing. But he had been in decline for a number of years. He had stopped making appearances. He gave 10 very long interviews, though, to a couple of biographers who wrote a book called The Man Who Saved New York, which is a wonderful, wonderful book about Hugh Carey. And he did that just over the last couple of years, and that was pretty much the last anybody heard from him. He began to turn down requests for interviews and that sort of thing. Was always kind of a private guy in a lot of ways, and was always somebody who had a rich and robust family and business life and career outside of politics. I mean, he was not a machine politician in the traditional sense. He got into it and he liked it, and he brought his whole family along, and they were famous for going around, you know, singing songs and things like that, the singing Careys. But he wasn't just a machine hack. I mean, he you know, so he went back to his family and he went back to business, and he went back to his life after his time in office was over.
Yeah, and talking about his family, he had a big family, so that was a huge part of his life.
Oh, yeah, huge part of his life. I mean, and much of what he did was really based on that. And even in the pre-Bloomberg era, when, you know, he wasn't like a rich guy who could finance his campaigns, but he had a brother who was quite successful in the petroleum business, in the oil business, and who helped finance a lot of his campaigns. So he relied on his family going into politics. He went back to his family after politics, and you know, built a really interesting legacy. And unlike a lot of people who are politicians who never get sick of the game and never want to leave the game, When his time was over, he just decided it was over, and you didn't hear that much from him. You know, we don't see him popping up on NY1 as one of the NY1 wise guys, commenting on policies and endorsing candidates and that sort of thing. When his time was over, he decided it was over.
Yeah, it is very unusual. You don't see that often now. And here, you know, we have a statement from Governor Cuomo this morning announcing the passing of the former governor and, you know, pointing out that he and his wife, his late wife, raised 14 children together. So as you said, you know, there was politics and then there was family, and he lived quite a full life.
Indeed.
All right. Errol, thanks so much. We know you're going to have much more for us throughout the day and also tomorrow on Inside City Hall.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. We're going to return now to On Stage, and of course throughout the day we will have much more on the life and legacy of the former governor.